Let me talk about one of these bigger issues, and which is the homosexuals working in a workplace or people coming in from the LGBTQI community. If we talk about gender, very minuscule improvements have taken place in years of working towards this, and you probably are one of the people who actually started it. Do you see enough being done on the LGBTQI side
Now,
now? And do you think that it's possible to go beyond that ticking the box, saying that we have very gender inclusive workplaces where people from all walks of life walk in, irrespective of their gender?
yeah. So, see, the good part is sometimes buzz that happens is good also. Everybody is doing it, I must do it too. So, the moment people started doing work with the LGBTQ community, inviting them and creating inclusion around, then others want to do it. Now, if you really talk to them about their own deep beliefs about the community, you'll find a lot of things there. Again, not good and bad. It's the way you've been brought up.
Yeah.
It's the conditioning that you've been brought up. You'll be surprised, Paul, how many people will say that I think it's peer pressure.
Yeah.
Or how many people will say that it could be a psychological disorder, right? So when you start having conversations, they open up. The best part, even when we were talking about earlier about people resisting, saying women should be primary caretakers of home, or whatever else the pushback or the rejection is, for any of these aspects, I invite pushbacks. It's only when they're able to open up, and I feel very happy that in my sessions people are able to open up. In fact, many of my family members joke about it and say, what is it that you do that people just come up with their life story in front of you? So objections, resistances, whatever these resistances may be, and sometimes people are very embarrassed to talk about it. But once they start asking questions and once they open up, they're willing to learn. Then we can steer them towards a different way. How do you steer them? It's a combination of data, research, stories, examples, and benefits.
Yeah.
When you give all of this together, then you make a change. So, see, even the whole terminology of LGBTQAI, how many people know it? The word intersex, how many people know it? The word trans, how many people really know trans? Right? So, and people are very embarrassed to ask these questions, because these have been topics in India which have been so taboo. It's like revolving around sexuality, and sexuality is not talked about in our homes. Yeah. So, therefore, when you start talking about it, when you start understanding it, when there is the right kind of education that is given around it, two areas where I think a lot of right medical knowledge has to be given. One is neurodiversity, and the neurodiversity means people with cerebral palsy, autism, learning disabilities, and then the LGBTQ. In these two areas, you need proper scientific medical knowledge, so that people are then able to understand the whole identity issue around that. One was a story, I think I've spoken about it in the TED talk, maybe you may have heard about it, about this girl who was not coming out, and she was so full of shame because of her identity, and it needed that little nudge for her to say that she was a lesbian, and all the shame that was associated around, and all the bullying that that was happening because of that. And then what gave the courage to come out in the organization was an ally. If you're standing next to somebody and saying, okay, do it at your pace, but I'm here. So she came out in our own small group. We had a smaller group where we were going through a journey. The question I then asked to the rest of the group, who is willing to stand by her when she comes out in the organization? Everybody raised their hand and said, we're going to be there. And then she did come out in the organization. So that was a great example of allyship. More stories, this was a success story. But I'll also talk about stories which are very painful. You make progress when you have an opportunity to touch their lives in any ways, but it takes time. So, you know, the corporate women that we see, who are, when you see them, they're dressed so smartly, they're talking so well, and you think everything is in place, and suddenly you go back and hear their stories, which are so painful, and sometimes the bias or the social system is reflected, so sadly reflected there. One of the stories was that the woman says, and you talked about religion, we'll talk about that as well. So she said that as a girl child, she was not allowed to study. And she had this intense desire to study, but parents said, no, only brothers will study, you cannot. You're going to get married and go. Started working in the house when she was 5 years old, cooking at age 5 and 6. By the time she was 14, they got her married. She was a Muslim girl. And few years later, husband has an affair with someone and leaves her. Now the divorce process for her, due to certain legalities, became a huge uphill task. It took her 13 years to get a divorce. A lifetime gone by because of the social stigmas and because of the legal system not being able to support to the extent it should. The time she was going through the divorce, she said her parents would not come with her to the court. It's not as if she, and it was no fault of hers, the husband had an affair somewhere, but the parents would not accept her back. Yeah, and she said, when I went to police stations, the police officers were so inappropriate, all kinds of sexual harassment issues happening over there. How many battles does one person fight alone? This is only one story I'm telling you, Paul. When I do these women journeys and when they talk to me and when they open their hearts to me, this is so common. So many of our well-educated corporate women have gone through immense battles in their lives because of the social norms and are still going through those battles. I can relate 100 such stories, but that would take too long.